Brought to you by JMR Rentals, professional digital cinema and broadcast equipment rentals in Brooklyn, New York. JMRNY.com. Hello and welcome to No Rest for the Weekend. I'm Jason Godbey. Recently, I took a trip to Los Angeles to get the real story on what it's like to live in LA and work in the entertainment industry. But before I ventured to the West Coast, I reached out to an industry veteran who first appeared on our program back in 2020. Here's my interview with producer-director Julie Rowen. What brought you to Hollywood? What was the job? What was the show that you were on? Tell me all about it.
I grew up in St. Louis, and my first job out of college was working for a commercial director. And they had an office in Chicago, and I moved to Chicago to work in that office. And from the people that I met there, particularly the first AD, he was also the first AD for John Hughes, a director who was doing a film called Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And that was the first film that I worked on. It was a film with John Candy and Steve Martin, and they were shooting in Chicago. And that was my first time on a film set. It was my first film experience. And that film finished shooting in Los Angeles. So I went with the film to Los Angeles, and they finished shooting the film on the Paramount lot. So that was my first experience in going to a studio lot, and it was the Paramount lot, which has such great history of directors and producers and actors and cinematographers and costume designers and production designers, and all the greats had certainly worked there. And it was a incredible experience to drive on that lot and be able to work there and have that experience. It was a great one.
What was your vision of Hollywood, or what was like your dream of Hollywood before you got there?
I really knew I had never been to Los Angeles. I really knew nothing about Los Angeles or the film business except for what I had seen in movies and on TV. And I had studied film, the history of film in school, and I loved films very much. And it seemed very glamorous, and a lot of really talented people and great storytellers. And it seemed like a place that I wanted to go and a business that I wanted to be in. But it seemed like a tall ladder to climb, for sure.
Obviously, when you first start out, you're not the producer, you're not the executive producer. You're starting out like sort of the low man on the totem pole type job. What was it for you that was like the reality of, like, you had this sort of dream, this Hollywood dream of Hollywood? What was your reality of Hollywood and the day-to-day grind kind of thing?
The reality of Hollywood is very different. They're long hours, it's hard work, it's a lot of people with following a very specific vision of the director. So in that sense, it's an incredible thing to watch that creative process. For me, I think it met every expectation I had of what it was like to maybe come and work on a film. I remember showing up on the film set and I thought, oh my gosh, you're in the door, don't mess up. Like, make yourself as dispensable, as indispensable as possible, and, work hard, and hopefully this will work out for you, because I loved it. I loved it from the moment I showed up on the set.
Was there ever a time when the novelty or the romance kind of faded away, and did you ever think, why am I doing this, or maybe I should have done something else? Or
I have to say, for me, no. I was really lucky that my first film was with such a great director, such a great writer, director, actors, the people that he surrounded himself with. I knew those were the best people in the business, and I was in awe of being there. And I felt so fortunate to be there. and I wanted to learn from those people. So it didn't diminish it. It made me, want to work harder and want to be there more. And I think it depends on maybe what your experience is, what your expectation is when you go there. I really wanted to work in the film business, and I didn't have an expectation of success. I didn't know where this was going to lead, and that was okay. I didn't, because I don't think you can guarantee somebody success really in any business, but particularly in the film business. But I think if you work hard enough, you can have the opportunity to get in the door, and then it's sort of what you make of it. But working with the people that I've worked with was such an intimidating experience, that it never felt like it was less than. It was always, more than my expectations.
You came to Hollywood a while ago. How much has the business changed since you started there? And do you feel like it's even the same business anymore?
I do feel like it's the same business. I think that when I came here, it was very much about the studio system and making a range of movies within the studio system. Um, and obviously, the studios were about making big films, and uh, less about making the smaller independent films. And for those films, that's hard to find a place, a theatrical release. There just aren't that many. So that was always a challenge. And obviously, the business has changed, and now streaming has become such an important part of the film business, with Amazon and Netflix and Hulu and Apple and the number of streamers that are out there. And I think that that has given a place for more content, which is a good thing for the business. And it's a good thing for that budget range, that now you can have more smaller, what would have been independent films, that now have a platform and have kind of a built-in audience where people can find those films. So I think change in any business is hard. And I think between the pandemic and changing from a studio system to a streaming service system is a big change in Hollywood for sure. But I think that people are sort of on board with that's what's happening, and how do we do this, and how do we make this work. And I think that the pandemic made streaming even more popular for everybody, because everybody was home, and in many ways that was a wonderful thing for people to have. And now hopefully people are going to return to the movie theater, and they're going to want that collaborative experience again. They're going to want to watch films with an audience, and they're going to want to go to concerts with an audience. And hopefully we're going to shift, and we're going to be able to do both. So that's what I'm hoping is we're headed to.
Just to talk about the business for a sec, I mean, I know what you're saying is that yes, there's more opportunity for content, but it does feel like everyone and their uncle has a movie or a television show or something that they're pitching. You look at the various free platforms out there, YouTube, Vimeo, and the alike, and they're all incredibly saturated right now. And there just seems to be this sort of, there's like a very small door with a lot of cattle trying to get through it. Is the democratization of media better or worse for the creator? Like, in one way, I think it's better because it gives you opportunity, but it also gives you a lot more competition. Whereas before, like in the 90s, when you had, the Kevin Smiths of the world, or the Quentin Tarantinos, there weren't that many of them that had the ability to make movies. So if they could make a movie, it's like they got more credit if it was good and they could actually sell it. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I agree. I think what happened was, as you're saying, it opened the door for everybody, and particularly everybody now that has an iPhone can go out and shoot a movie, and they can post it on YouTube, or they can. And I think that people have been fascinated with the amount of content, and we've been in a situation where people can sit and watch a lot of content. And what I'm hoping is that people now want to watch good content, and that sort of goes back to what it used to be, which is what you're talking about. You had to be really good You had to be a really good storyteller, a really good actor, a really good director in order to get an audience. And I'm hoping that although we have more places for content, we're going to go back to the audience being more selective about what they watch. And hopefully that will be a little more back to talented filmmakers rather than this notion that anybody can go out and shoot something and it's entertaining. It's not all good. It's some of it is. It's not all good.
That's interesting because that gets into the question, well, then who is the tastemaker of this content? Who is the curator? In a capitalistic society, usually that goes to the big corporations. So then you get back to that almost studio-like system, and now that, and I mentioned this on the episode that we did on the Roxy Cinema here, where you're talking about getting back to the movies. There is this danger now that movie studios can buy theaters. There's no law prohibiting them to do that anymore. We're just going to have basically Disneyland at the movies, and like Disney or Warner's or any of the big guys will own their own theater chains. They'll own the entire means of distribution as well as the means of big budget production. And I'm wondering kind of like, where does that leave us? And will there be a rebellion against that? Or, are we just going to, herd into movie theaters like sheep and, just sample whatever they have to throw at us?
I understand completely what you're saying, and I don't disagree even. But I think at the end of the day, the audience sort of dictates what they want to see, and a studio can put a lot of money behind a film, and for whatever reason, it just doesn't resonate with the audience. So I think sometimes the film business gets accused of putting out the same content, and people are saying, oh my gosh, like they're only making one kind of film. And I think that's because the audience has said that that's what they want to see and that's what they'll pay for, and that's what they put out until somebody comes up with something that that changes that and says, oh, maybe we do want to see a rom-com, maybe we do want to see a period film, and that shifts things. So I think, as much as you're saying, businesses are trying to drive that content, I think ultimately the audience really decides what they want to see and what they're willing to pay for.
As Shakespeare said, there's the rub, because with the democratization of media, you've also had a lot of stuff out there for free, and people have gotten used to not paying for content. And it's, some creators can survive, YouTubers and so forth, with things like Patreon and stuff, but a lot of people can't. And it's not that, it still costs money to make content. And with fewer and fewer people wanting to watch commercials, then the business model has to shift. I'm thinking that a lot of stuff is going to just be subscription, and you're going to get like, kind of like it's becoming now with the streaming stuff. So, you're still going to they're going to make you pay for it either way. Like there's always at the end of the day, there's always a bill to pay. But I think it's going to be interesting to see kind of what survives, because there's, like you said, there's so many streaming platforms now, but which ones are going to actually be there at the end of the day, and which are just content libraries that are basically set up to be bought by bigger studios. Because that seems to be a business model nowadays, like the tech companies who develop some new technology just to get gobbled up by, Apple or somebody else. I think we're in a really interesting time. I just, for creators, and maybe you have some insight on this as well, how do you survive that, and how do you manage to make stuff with some sort of artistic integrity, and at the end of the day still get paid for it, and still able to make, at least make enough to make the next thing? Because most of these deals, I've seen them, my friends have seen them. At the end of the day, it's the creator who usually ends up with the short end of the stick, but yet we're still expected to keep making more. Is there? I know you're going through it right now with distribution with your film. Is there any advice that you might have on that, on how to kind of keep your integrity and also manage to survive?
Well, I think you have to make the content that you want to make, meaning at the end of the day, you have to be happy with the film that you've made. So there's that, but it's a business. So you also have to be feeding the machine. And what do people want to see? And what are they watching now? And maybe something that you're making, it's not the right time for it. And maybe it will sell, it won't sell right now. And that's why I think it's important to have a lot of different ideas out there and different projects that you want to do. And sometimes your project just leads to another project. So it's hard because you spend just as much time on those projects as you do on, the very successful projects. But sometimes somebody getting excited about your project means show me what else you have. Go bring me something else. Go bring me, I like what you did. Go bring me something else. And that can be soul crushing in a way, because you think, but I need to make money off of this. And I thought this was great. And maybe it was, maybe it's not the right time for that. Maybe it will circle back around and find a home later on. Or maybe that just said to people, hey, you know what? I sort of like the way this person told the story, and I'm interested in what else they have to do. So I think you have to keep just churning in that process until you find, you'll eventually get there. You'll eventually, if they keep giving you the opportunity to do it again, hopefully you'll get to that place where you're actually getting paid and you're making some money.
It's an interesting notion. Talking about Hollywood, going out to LA. I know a lot of New Yorkers who've gone there. I know a lot of people. I know people who came back because they didn't like it out there. I know people who loved it out there. Given how things are, if you say it's a filmmaker, an actor, a screenwriter, if you were someone looking to go to Hollywood, looking to maybe live out there, or just maybe take some meetings out there, what kind of advice would you have for someone approaching the business, either show business or like sort of the Hollywood version of the business right now?
I think Los Angeles is hard in that sense. I was not brave enough to get in my car and drive out. I came here with a job, and that is the ideal situation to come here, is with a contact or some place to land when you get here, because Los Angeles is very different from New York. New York has an energy, and it's kind of like a moving train, and you sort of get what the city is. And Los Angeles is very spread out. And I think that the film business is a very tight community in Los Angeles. And I think the importance is to figure out that industry, figure out how to get in, figure out how to get a name and a contact, and somebody that will lead you, will either help open a door for you or lead you to somebody else that may be able to give you another name. So you have to, it's a little like when you go to shoot a documentary, one name leads to another name, and that's very much what the film business is like.
I think there are different. There's sort of Hollywood types and maybe not Hollywood types. Can you define for me who should go to Los Angeles and who shouldn't? Is there a personality type, or is there a type of person that, yes, you're made for LA, or maybe there's a type that you're not, you should not try to, you can work in show business, but just don't try to do it out here, kind of thing?
Well, I think there's two different personalities in the film business. So maybe I can there are agents and executives who would like to go to an office every day. That's sort of the lifestyle that they like, and they're very interested and they're very good at the business of it. And then there are creatives, and I'm not suggesting that those people aren't creative, but there are the people, the worker bees that go out and make the films. And those are two very different businesses, and they're very different personalities that like that. The actual production is a far more casual, less Hollywood feel to it. it's long hours and it's hard work, and there's really very little that's glamorous about it, but you're just excited to watch this creative process with the people that you're with. And if that's what you like about the film business, that's what is going to excite you. And if you're a business person, the other end is what excites you. And I think that if you have a desire to be in either of those worlds, Los Angeles is a great place to come to experience that. And then the city is sort of secondary, because your life becomes this film community. And then whether you like the lifestyle of Los Angeles versus, a New York, that's such a personal thing. But I think if you want to be in the film business, it's important to at least come here at some point and see what the difference is and what maybe those different jobs are and what might interest you. And then that for sure exists in New York. There's no question. But I think it's good if you can have a knowledge of Los Angeles and the film business here and how it works and who the players are.
One thing I've heard, especially for filmmakers and probably a lot of other people, because there's so many filmmakers in Los Angeles, that they want to pigeonhole you right away. Like they want you to be a one thing and stay in your lane. Do you find that's true as well? And what if you're not that? What if you're not a specialty artist? Do I need to be a specialist, or can I work in different genres? Can I work on different things and still have a Hollywood career?
I think when you meet somebody, they want to get a sense of who you are and how do you fit into their company. And the film business is kind of the same way. So if you're a director and you come in and you have an action film, you want to sell yourself as that, I'm the action guy. And if your next project is a comedy, then you come back and you say, hey, I did this action thing and now I wrote this comedy and I think, I want to do that. But whatever project you're trying to sell is, whatever job you're trying to get, you want to convince somebody that you're the best person for that job. So I think the more you can be specific about why you would be a good person for them to choose, or why your project is a good project, I think you have to be a bit of your own salesperson at that point. And that can be hard, because I know for myself, the people that I started with in the business, it was wonderful and I learned so much and it was such a great masterclass, but it could also be intimidating because I would feel like I'm never going to be that. I'm never going to be that smart or that talented, or I'm never going to have that level of success. And that's okay, but you don't want to let that stop you from your own experience, because maybe you're not that, but maybe you're something else, and that's valuable and that's worth pursuing. And you sort of have to put the blinders on and appreciate what's around you, but not get so intimidated by it.
That's a really great point, and I think it's a great point to leave off on. So the Heir of the Time is currently sort of shopping distribution. We'll look out for it. If people want to know more about the film or about you, where can they find you on the web?
You can go to Instagram to the Heir of the Time and you can reach me there, or you can reach me also on Instagram through Julie Rowen.
Julie, thanks so much. That was really insightful and really great. I'm so glad that I know that you're going to London, so I'm glad that we could get some time before you went there and I went to LA. But thanks so much. That was great.
Thank you.
And that's all we have for you today. Thanks so much for taking this trip down the rabbit hole. For more of our content, visit our website, norestfortheweekendpodcast.com. Don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. And now you can subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/getbehindtherabbit. Once again, I'd like to thank my guest, Julie Rowen, and our sponsor, JMR Rentals. For Behind the Rabbit Productions, I'm Jason Godbey. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.